Hello and welcome to another episode of the Throwin MMA podcast. I'm your host Adam Gerber, and this week we're discussing the upcoming Israel Adesanya Romero bout, as well as Joseph Benavidez proving that flyweights have knockout power via Davison Figueiredo's fists. So, first we're gonna get to UFC from Norfolk and the saga of Joey B and Figgy Doo. Davison Figueiredo wins the fight via second round. Let me get my notes up here. Via second round. Oh, again, still not. How unprofessional of me. Second round TKO. I should have known that. I watched him get knocked out with my own eyes, and I predicted it. And it was just the same, except a thing that I didn't predict, but I saw in the fight in the first round is that Joseph Benavidez just jumps into every one of his combinations completely head first, completely head and face first, and eventually Figueiredo ducked the wrong way or the right way, depending on how the fight went. Maybe he did it on purpose. Maybe it was a bit of a little nodder. Maybe he ducked his head in for a little clash of heads. Benavidez not only got concussed and a little bit wobbled, but he got a massive cut over the top of his eye that started leaking in. Figueiredo blasted him with the right hand on the same side. Couldn't see it, A, because of the dizziness, and B, because of the blood in his eye. And he went down. He went down hard, and he got knocked out pretty much the exact way I predicted it. I thought that it would take until about round 4 for him to get tired enough and to get sloppy enough that Figueiredo would be able to pick him off. I think it was very much a game of, would he tire Figueiredo out enough with his movement and with his wrestling that Figueiredo wouldn't be able to land that knockout blow once Benavidez was a little bit tired and a little bit sloppier and letting more shots through. But everything in this fight really just happened in complete fast forward. It went straight from the opening gate. Benavidez was trying seemingly much too hard to knock him out because he was landing some good shots in the beginning, and then Figueiredo just started picking him off on the way in. He started solving the puzzle. Like I said, Benavidez was throwing him at it about as fast as he could, and then that was it. They clashed heads, and Figueiredo only needed one shot to put him down, and Benavidez was laying on his back, and instead of in the fourth round, it was in the second. I think what a lot of it had to do was also a lot of what had to do with the accelerated nature of the fight was that grappling exchange in the first round. I think did Benavidez go for the takedown, or did Figueiredo? I can't remember who shot the takedown, but ended up on the ground, and Figueiredo attempted a few submissions and ended up almost getting an armbar. It looked like it was insanely close. His shoulder must have been twisted at the correct angle, but oh man, like that looked like it should have been deep enough to finish the fight. Somehow Joseph Benavidez survives, and I think that somehow is probably through a lot of exerted effort. You could tell that he had to work so hard to get out of that because that was a locked-in armbar. And that's the thing about those submissions like that, when they're so well applied, you can still get out of them if you have the proper technique and all that, but you need technique and athleticism and explosion at the right times, and a lot of times that'll sap guys to the point where, yeah, you got out of the submission, but now you're clearly, you don't have the pop in your shots as you did before, and that seemed to be Benavidez to me. He got up from that grappling exchange. He wasn't bouncing as much. He seemed a little bit more flat-footed, and he started loading up on his shots way more and being much more invested in ending the fight early, and he came in with these big looping shots. He didn't always lead with the jab, which he should have. Sometimes he just led with a rear straight to the body. And eventually, Figueiredo started finding his marks. And the more he started finding his marks on the way in, the faster Benavidez would leap in head first. And then that led to the clash of heads. People saying this is an unfair ending to this fight because it happened directly after the clash of heads. It was 100% caused by Benavidez. 100% caused by Benavidez. So you feel bad for the guy because of his story and because, this was supposed to be sort of his coronation. But, as a lot of people have said and as the last episode was called, but, oh man. It sucks, but it just shows like these things never go the way you think they're going to go. And of course, Davison Figueiredo misses weight, so now we don't even have a flyweight champion anymore. Benavidez goes to 0-3 in title fights. and he joins a very small group of people that he shares that attribute with. Uriah Faber, I know, being one. Or in UFC title fights, I suppose. Uriah Faber being one. Dan Henderson, Chael Sonnen, excuse me. Kenny Florian, Pedro Hizzo, and Alexander Gustafsson. So yeah, that's not a group you want to be a part of necessarily. Legends, all of those guys, but you never get the belt, I suppose. And you got to you got to wonder if this is it for Benavidez. Part of my analysis of this fight was that he was 35 and that some of his speed was probably starting to pass him. And his style relies so much on his speed, especially the striking style. He's going to need especially with some of these hitters like Figueiredo, he's going to need almost a complete overhaul in what he does in his style before he beats some of these guys. So it's tough. It's tough looking at this from Benavidez's perspective, but that's the way it goes sometimes. All right, next we had Felicia Spencer, and she just absolutely smashed Zara Farron dos Santos. Expectedly so, because Sarah Farron lost to Megan Anderson by triangle, so obviously Felicia Spencer is going to smash her, but of course, there's only 4 women in this division, and they all fought each other tonight. You'd like to call it a can, but you can't really do that because, as I said, there's literally only 4 of them. We want to talk about robberies. A lot of people have been mentioning robberies lately. We were absolutely robbed of a great fight between Jan Kutalaba and Magomed Ankalaev. That was an absolutely horrible stoppage by the referee there. And he fell for the rope-a-dope. Jan Kutalaba was taunting him and swinging his head back and forth and, trying to get a shot in a giant overhand right, and the ref fell for it. Plain and simple. That's all it was. The ref completely fell for the rope-a-dope. Sucks. Absolutely sucks, because that was going to be great. The intensity was off the charts. That interaction they had at the beginning was incredible. That is must-see TV. That's what you watch this for. Absolutely raw, absolutely unfiltered. And I want to see a redo of that, because that was going to be a banger. And I love cultivating these intrigues and these storylines in light heavyweight, because this division needs more attention, and it needs more action, and it needs more storylines running through it. This division is on the cusp of a complete renaissance, and the more intrigue it can garner, the better. So give me a rematch of that as soon as possible. Put it on next week's card, because it's lost so many great fights, especially between big bangers. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Put that on next week's fight. Book it, Dana. Next, Megan Anderson crushed the other girl that just got brought in to get crushed, Norma Dumont. And they were about to wall install each other for the whole fight, and then Megan Anderson landed that huge right hand. I mean, she hits hard. Like, people like to act like she has absolutely no attributes, but when she hits you, she hits really, really hard. She can get out grappled for sure, but when she lands the hand, like, chicks fall down in a way that normally women don't have this one-punch power, and I think that's why people want to get excited about her, but she just can't seem to put everything together, especially grappling-wise and implementing that striking game. Grant Dawson submitted Derek Minor in the second. That was a fight, I guess. It always sucks when a person's style is grind them out and they missed weight. It seems almost like extra cheating a little bit. But Grant Dawson's going to have to do some really impressive stuff to get me to really care about him, because so far all he's done is missed weight and popped and then had a grinding fight. So Kyler Phillips looked really cool. I'd like to see him against definitely some higher competition. The fight could have been stopped earlier, honestly. Gabriel Silva looked really good in the beginning. His clinch work was good. He was using that hand on the thigh technique to control the clinch that Leon Edwards does. But Phillips's striking was just leagues and leagues and leagues ahead, and the jiu-jitsu games were pretty close to even. And eventually, Gabriel Silva was just so battered and bruised up that he was and so exhausted that he couldn't keep up on the ground. So great fight. That one's definitely one to watch. Brendan Allen. This was another great fight. Brendan Allen versus Tom Breeze. Great technical fight. Exciting fight. First round finish from Brennan Allen. The TKO just comes out of nowhere after trading submissions back and forth, scrambling for position the whole time. Brennan Allen gets top position near the end of the round and just starts unloading on Tom Breeze. Hits him with a short uppercut straight through the middle that Tom Breeze didn't even see coming, and that gets him a little dazed, and then he just rains down elbows until there's a stoppage. That was great. Marcin Tybura versus Sergey Spivak. Sat for the first couple minutes of that, realized what that was going to be, and fast forwarded through it, and look at that. It was just a boring decision for Tybura where I guess he made him out grapple him, which is more impressive. Sergey Spivak, I guess, has room for improvement at 25 years old. His boxing is looking better. His striking was atrocious in his last couple outings, and it looked a little bit tighter this time, so I guess there's something there. He's a spring chicken at 25 for heavyweight. Luis Pena versus Steve Garcia, another sort of whatever decision. He was on his back the whole time. They're slapping each other. I think, honestly, you could have given it to Steve Garcia, the amount of damage he did, even though Pena was on his back, just punching backwards over his head, going, come on, let's go, let's go. What is Luis Pena? This is just such a joke every time, and I'm not going to talk anymore about it. I don't know what's interesting about this guy. He could barely beat the dude coming in on freaking short notice here. I just don't see what's special about this guy, man. He goes against mediocre looking opponents, and he looks mediocre against them. So what's the hype? What is the hype around this guy? Jordan Griffin versus TJ Brown. Jordan Griffin really wanted to guillotine this guy. And he was going to try it from every single position there was, and eventually did it from side control on the bottom, which was incredible. I didn't even think that was possible, but if there's a will, there's a way. He really proved that if you throw up enough submissions, one is bound to work, no matter whether you have it really or not. Alon Cruz versus Spike Carlisle. I'm going to need to go back and rewatch this and the Sean Brady versus Ismail Nardiev fight, because I did not see the early prelims. Apparently, I saw the Spike Carlisle finish. Those were definitely a couple back of the head elbows. Apparently, they're going to be. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go watch the clips right now. I'll watch the clips of these fights, and then I'll comment on the early prelims. All right, and take you to the future. Okay, so that was awesome. Holy crap. I don't think hardly any of those were to the back of the head. Maybe the first two. The first one, I don't think so. Maybe the second one. But other than that, I think most of, pretty much every one of those were clean, to the ears. I know I keep saying pretty much. A lot of them looked like they were behind the head, but they were just behind the ear, which is allowed. So, that was just dope. That was just awesome. Way bigger guy, kicks him in the face, stuffs the takedown, cracks him with elbows in an unconventional way. That wasn't even the Travis Brown elbows. That's great. He has that he dances his way to the octagon, has a weird little giggle while they're introducing him. Insane, dude. I'm absolutely into that. His whole 187 on the 666, I think he means he killed somebody in the ring. I'm on board with Spike Carlisle. Being a fellow redhead, I'm definitely down with Spike Carlisle. Alpha Ginger forever. Day one, he's already in the Throwin Bones Hall of Fame. Why not? Sean Brady and it looks like Sean Brady gave Ismail Nardiev a lesson in wrestling. So that makes sense, because Nardiev looked crazy good, technical standing up. He seemed pretty good at stuffing takedowns too. So Sean Brady probably be something special wrestling wise. And now I'm seeing that he's 12-0 after this. So definitely excited to see his next outing too. Wow, they really delivered with the Fight Pass prelims on that card. The rest of the card was kind of nice. All right, well, I've got a couple more things to talk about, I guess, here. What's next for Amanda Nunes, you guys? What's next for Amanda Nunes? Because apparently it all depended on what happened tonight at these fights. And Felicia Spencer beat her. Who the fuck is that girl? And Megan Anderson beat her. Who the fuck is that girl? And as far as I'm concerned, Felicia Spencer has a win over Megan Anderson, so this shouldn't even really be much of a conversation. It should be, if Nunes is going to be defending her title at UFC 250 at featherweight at 245 or 145. Sorry, it should be against Felicia Spencer. Felicia Spencer had a really close fight with Cyborg. She's beaten the only other thing that can come even close to being called a contender in the division. And on top of that, I think it'll be a much closer fight than people think. I think Felicia Spencer's got incredible durability. She took a crazy amount of damage from Cyborg and barely even showed it, let alone let it slow her down in her game plan. And she's got fantastic grappling. You know, Nunes is very, and that's why her fights with Shevchenko were so close, and this is coming from number one Nunes fan. She does one facet really well, but going between the facets, she kind of has trouble. She can strike your pants off, but as you saw in the Germaine de Randamie fight, when she feels like she's got a lot of power coming back at her, or she feels like you can take the damage and just sap her energy, then she'll just go grappling heavy. I think Felicia Spencer has the durability to wear Nunes out by getting punched in the face. I know that's not necessarily a compliment, but I think it'll make for an interesting dynamic, because once that happens, I don't think Amanda can rely on just going back to her grappling. And if she does, I think Felicia might take over there. I think it's a much interesting matchup than people give it credit for. Much more interesting than Megan Anderson, because that fight just looks like the Durandamy fight. This is a style matchup that Nunes hasn't had in a long time. So I think Felicia Spencer or Irene Aldana. Those are the two at bantamweight. She's gonna fight at bantamweight, Irene Aldana, or Felicia Spencer at featherweight. I think those are the two next in line as far as Amanda Nunes is concerned. What's next for flyweight? Because Figueiredo just lost to Formica, who is like the other top contender there, who has also lost to Joe Benavidez. All right, I've got the rankings up now, so I can actually talk on what the hell's going on here. So, what do? You've got Joseph Benavidez, who just lost to Davison Figueiredo, who didn't get the title because he was overweight. You've got Jussier Formiga, who just beat Davison Figueiredo, right? And then lost a TKO to Joseph Benavidez, who just lost to Davison Figueiredo. And then you've got Alexandre Pantoja, who just lost to Davison Figueiredo. And then you've got Brandon Moreno, who's fantastic, who's booked against Jussier Formiga. So I guess that could sort of be the contender fight to fight Figueiredo for the vacant title next. Askar Askarov looks really good. I think Kai Kara-France and Askar Askarov is probably the next fight to make. And then, yeah, it's kind of between them. I'd say do Askar Askarov versus Kai Kara-France, and then Brandon Moreno versus Jussier Formiga, and whoever's got the most impressive win. Probably gets the unification fight against Figueiredo. Because honestly, it's just you can't wait. There's too many contenders at bantamweight for you to just wait for Henry Cejudo to come back down to flyweight. I don't think Cejudo has any intention of coming back to flyweight, despite what he says. Especially with him fighting Aldo next, there's way too many contenders at bantamweight. Like, Aldo is we just talk about how awful of a fight that is with Aldo for a second. Like, the response to it has been universal hatred. Nobody wants it. Nobody asked for that fight. Nobody wants it at all. Aldo moves down in weight, fights Marlon Moraes, loses, no matter, despite what you think of the actual fight and what happened and how you would score it, officially loses the fight. It was close enough. Honestly, I don't think you can call it a robbery. It was such a close fight. Doesn't get the win, and then just gets the title shot off it when there's people like Corey Sandhagen and Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling waiting as bona fide proven contenders that have more than earned their shot. This is ridiculous. And it's nothing to do with this is a perfect segue into next week, because there's a similar situation going on in next week's main event that I think, due to all of the factors involved, which is many factors, because normally this sort of thing is not justifiable, due to all the factors involved, I think Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero is reasonable, even though Yoel Romero is coming off of a close loss, same as Jose Aldo is. Jose Aldo doesn't have any wins at bantamweight. Romero, on the other hand, has been respected at middleweight for a long time as the bona fide number one contender. All right? A lot of people think he won those fights against Robert Whittaker. So he's been up there and he's been close for a long time. Nobody's asked for Aldo versus Cejudo, ever. On the other hand, all the way up Israel Adesanya's rise, all the way up until he beat Robert Whittaker, what everyone had said about him from the beginning was, but he hasn't beaten people like Yoel Romero. But when he fights Yoel Romero, see how you talk. Or when he was, talking about Robert Whittaker in the build-up to their fight, you should put more respect into that because he's fought Yoel Romero twice. I think Adesanya understands that Romero's sort of the boogeyman, not only to the division, but to his style in a lot of people's minds. And they think with Romero's durability and his wrestling acumen that it's kind of a nightmare matchup for Adesanya. So I think not only is he taking that out as like sort of the biggest doubt in the division, he's taking him out as that established threat that's sort of been looming over him. Like, oh, but when you get to this type of fighter, you're boned. And it's sort of what a lot of people wrote him off against Whittaker, is because Whittaker had conquered that sort of mountain and he hasn't yet. I think he recognizes this as an established goalpost in the division that he needs to pass, right? And I think it's genius because you're getting inside the mind of the fan. A lot of people are like, you're not the real champ until you beat Yoel. He goes, well, I'll take on Yoel then, whether he's ready for me or not, whether he's deserving the fight or not. I'll take him on because right now the only number one contender who just beat him is injured, and I don't want to sit around for a long time. So I'll take this in the meantime. I'll prove that all those people were wrong the entire time that I was coming up and they told me I couldn't take a guy like this. I'll kill off your stand-in guy who's the guy to beat in the meantime, and then I'll take on my list of contenders. That's great. Here, this is just a list of contenders and they're throwing in a guy who they think is more popular in Brazil so they can sell more tickets. It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it as a money fight either. Unless you're in Brazil, casual fans, they know Henry Cejudo's name as much as they know Aldo's name. You're not going to earn any more money by putting them against each other, which is something I've, said before. Oh, man. And there's no bona fide number one contenders after Costa at middleweight. They still need to fight it out. Between Cannonier and Hermanson and Till and... God, like there's so many people down there. I know I'm forgetting someone right now, but I don't know, man. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, this fight. Nobody wants it, and it's such a bummer. It's such a bummer that like these other guys are getting passed up in the meantime. And that one of them, they're probably going to have to fight each other and knock one of each other off, and then we're not going to get these three great fighters all fighting for the title one after the other. We're going to get two of them tops. Sucks. So yeah, that's why to me, Romero versus Izzy is so much more justifiable than Aldo versus Cejudo. And Aldo Cejudo just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. The way Izzy Romero has happened is not preferable, but it makes sense given the context of that division, which is a wacky context. But that's how you get this wacky fight. This bantamweight division should be very straight up. Especially after the last couple years of redoing Cody Garbrandt versus Dillashaw over and over again, and then Dillashaw's going to go down and get the title, and then Dillashaw popped for steroids, and then Cejudo's back up now, and then Cejudo's injured. It's been in limbo, or at least stagnant in the same spot for such a long time, and this is what you're coming back with versus no wins at bantamweight, emaciated Jose Aldo. I get it's an interesting enough style matchup. I'll be excited enough for it when the weekend comes because the takedown defense of Aldo versus the wrestling of Cejudo and how their striking matches up, I think is going to be a fantastic, event. It's going to be a great fight probably, but it's not the fight that makes sense. Whereas like even though Romero versus Adesanya, even though it gives you pause, it makes you step back and you go, why? Romero just lost. He's lost his last couple. It makes sense though. When you think about it. Aldo versus Cejudo, the more you think about it, the less it makes sense. They're completely opposite fights, even though the situation seems so similar. All right, and I guess after that, we will move on to talking about Yoel Romero versus Israel Adesanya and the rest of UFC 248, the matchup, who's going to win, what the good fights of the card are, and how much it's been absolutely gutted with injuries, but that's all okay in sacrifice of Tony versus Khabib finally happening in April. Inshallah. All right, see you guys after the break. I would like to start this segment off with a moment of mourning and with a few prayers for the MMA gods through the Church of Gaethje, for through him all violence is possible. Amen. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the fights that fell through or were cancelled for this fantastic card in the name of the upcoming Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson fight. The fight to end all fights. Know that the diminishment of this card only ensures the happening of the greatest fight ever. And even if this card is now a 7, when it used to be a solid 9 out of 10, I still think we should be happy with this. It's a fantastic card still. And even though it's not a stacked card anymore, I think we can all take solace knowing that a sacrifice like this must surely satiate the MMA gods and gets us closer and closer to that sweet nectar come April. In Gaethje's name, Amen. Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. Whittaker withdrew for undisclosed reasons. Darren Till versus Jared Cannonier. After much posturing on social media and fervent fan anticipation and visa issues from Darren Till, Jared Cannonier had to pull out with a torn pectoral muscle. Jeremy Stevens versus Calvin Kattar. Stevens' injury has forced this fight to be moved to a later bout in a later card. Derek Brunson versus Edmund Shabazian has also been rescheduled. And Edmund Shabazian's move up through the middleweight rankings will need to be postponed. Movsar Evloev versus Douglas Da Silva de Andrade. Not only did Andrade withdraw from the bout, but after they remade it with Jamal Emmers versus Movsar Evloev had a motorcycle crash and had to reschedule. He will be alright though, but not good enough to fight. So now it's going to be Giga Chikadze. And now we can move on. Now that we've had that solemn moment for the MMA gods to appreciate their benevolence and their cosmic sense of equity and fairness, we can now move on with the rest of the card. So first off, Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero. That's going to be a good fight. Like, guaranteed this is a fantastic fight. I think the rest of the questions that we have about Israel Adesanya are going to be answered in this fight. Ergo, the grappling acumen, how he's going to do against someone with the durability to take his shots for most of the fight. I just can't wait to see this. Like, the long, rangy kickboxing, the style of Adesanya, the power, the rhythm of Romero, the explosions. Oh, is he going to be able to get to Adesanya with his slick defense and his maneuverability? Oh, it's just the clashing of these styles. The grappling of Yoel Romero, the wrestling. Will he be able to get Adesanya down? Has Adesanya shored up that part of his game since the last couple times we've seen him grappling? Has he bridged that gap? Will he be able to stave that off and work from the outside and work in the striking game against him? Because I don't think he has a lot of a chance in the grappling game, to be honest. I think it's about keeping him off and staying out from underneath Romero. And then if you can keep it striking, that's not a guaranteed either. Romero is one of the hardest people to put away or even hurt that I've ever seen fight ever. A lot of his past opponents have described him as feeling like he's made of cement or concrete, which is insane. So Israel better pack a lunch. I doubt if we see this one finished by Israel Adesanya, this is going to be legend status. Otherwise, I think he's going to have to fight perfectly to a decision, and I mean perfectly. And this is going to answer all their questions. Is he a flash in the pan? Is he just a great talent, or does he have the possibility to be an all-time great? This is a real challenge for Israel Adesanya, and I can't wait to see it. I only wish Romero would have been able to fight younger with his physicality. But I don't think you'll see a lot of Romero's outdated, Romero's too old, all that after this fight if Izzy wins. I think everyone recognizes how dangerous he is, how much of a stylistic foil he should be for Adesanya. But man, will Izzy's defense be able to read the explosiveness and the rhythm and the timing? Because that's what Romero's know. Oh man, it's just such a great fight. I can't really say much more than that. It's the unstoppable force versus the unhittable object or fighter, which is Israel Adesanya, and it's, man, you'd think he'd have a really tough time, but the way he went through Whitaker, who knows? Of course, Whitaker fought completely different from, when he fought Yoel Romero. I'll maintain that Whitaker fought very questionably, kind of dumb for the Israel Adesanya fight, but man, this is truly a test. I don't know who to pick. It's a pick'em, and it's going to be a great fight. Might even end up being one of the best fights of the year, honestly. Then next you have Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and I think this might be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to pick Weili Zhang in this fight over Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I think that Weili Zhang has the technical prowess to sort of stay on par with Joanna in the kickboxing range, and then I think she just brings a dynamic power that very few women bring to that strawweight division. The way she blew through Jessica Andrade in the clinch, I just have a hard time not seeing her find her way to Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and as we know, Joanna Jędrzejczyk does not have the strongest chin, especially at strawweight. She's been dropped by jabs multiple times before, and I just think Weili Zhang is going to be too much for her. I think she's going to be able to keep up technically, and I think every single one of her shots, whether it be a leg kick or a knee to the body or an elbow or a straight right hand, are just going to be carrying more velocity and more power. I think you're going to see a very well-matched fight for the first little while, and then eventually Joanna Jędrzejczyk is going to start showing the damage, and Weili Zhang is going to take over the fight, and it may even end in a TKO if she catches her correctly. But Weili Zhang is a very, very dangerous fighter. Her having to deal with the coronavirus in China and moving around camps to Singapore to Bangkok and all around these places, might have a negative effect in her ability to train and her ability to prepare. But if you're in that division, you've been preparing to fight Joanna Jędrzejczyk for a long time. She was the queen for so long. Coming up as an up-and-coming fighter, she was the person that you would have had your eyes on top of. I would be very surprised if Zhang's cornerman and team hasn't had most of Zhang's career to study and form a game plan around Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And I think technically Joanna Jędrzejczyk is going to be a level or two above Weili Zhang, but I think Weili Zhang is gonna more than make up for that in her athleticism and her physicality and the power she brings to her punches. I don't see this being a good night for Joanna, but at the same time, I'd love to see her regain that title. I'd absolutely love that. I love watching Joanna fight, and strawweight doesn't feel the same without her at the top of the division, to be honest. Wow, two great fights at the top of this card. And then you have Beneil Dariush versus Drakkar Klose. And that should be an interesting fight. Drakkar Klose usually doesn't put on the craziest showing. He's very technically sound, and he knows how to eke out a decision. Beneil Dariush has just been buzzing through these medium to lower level guys, though, that are sort of on their way into the rankings. Frank Camacho, Drew Dober, Thiago Moises, less so Thiago Moises, but still. And I don't see Drakkar getting it done. He hasn't shown me any specialization or any like dynamic parts of his game that are something that Beneil Dariush hasn't dealt with before, tenfold. I don't really see anything Drakkar Klose does. If he does win, it's going to be through incredible discipline and game planning. But I think Dariush takes it here, being the smarter, more skilled, more multifaceted fighter. He's more well-rounded, that's for sure. Who we got next? We got Neil Magny versus Jingliang Li, and this is a great welterweight fight. Li Jingliang looked fantastic. He looked like a brand new fighter in his last fight against Easy Dos Santos. The swinging brawler was completely replaced by a technical power striker. And I think Neil Magny, especially, he's been off for about 2 years. This is his first fight back since his loss to Santiago Ponzinibbio back in 2018. And I think he's gonna look rusty out there, and I think he's gonna have a lot of trouble with this new Li Jingliang. A lot of trouble. I think he's gonna get lit up. I think the heavy leg kicks from Li Jingliang, if he throws them, are going to really, really mess up Neil Magny. Probably faster than he got messed up against Santiago Ponzinibbio. And I see Li Jingliang just buzzing through him. Honestly, I see it as an early TKO for the Leech. That should be a great fight, though. Next, we've got Cowboy Oliveira versus Max Griffin, and you know Cowboy Oliveira carries that huge power. He's coming off a loss, I believe, to, let's see here. He's coming off a loss to Mike Perry and Nicholas Dalby and Gunnar Nelson. So they've got him here against Max Griffin, who is going to stand and strike with him instead of take him down and try and choke him out. But I think Max Griffin is smart enough. He's got that good jab, and I think this fight's going to look a lot like his fight against Perry. I think he's going to out-technique him, circle around, and out-jab him, and Max Griffin's probably going to win a decision. I think he's going to be able to control that wildness, unless Cowboy Oliveira makes this a complete sprawling, twirling, whirling dervish slugfest. I don't really see him out-techniquing Max Griffin. But Griffin can get cracked. Griffin can absolutely get cracked. He's been hurt, and when he gets hurt, that usually affects him for the rest of the fight. He's never been finished in the UFC, but he can definitely get cracked, and that's what Alex Oliveira does, is he cracks you. So that should be a great fight. Sean O'Malley's making his comeback against Jose Quinones. Long time coming after having troubles with USADA. The return of Sugar Sean O'Malley seems like he's been keeping around doing grappling matches and stuff like that. Grappling only matches, keeping busy. But Quinones is easily the most legit fighter he's faced, easily. And this is really going to give us a gauge for how good O'Malley really is, because I know he injured himself. He was kind of styling on Sukumtov, and before that wasn't like this crazy blowout performance. He's been gone so long. How long has he been gone here? 2018. Again, he's been out for 2 years. Hasn't fought for 2 years. I think the Sean O'Malley we saw against Andrei Sukumtov 2 years ago, I think he probably would have to do a lot of improving to get the W over Jose Quinones, and it's always tough to gauge how much better these guys are going to get in their off time. This really shouldn't be easy considering his layoff, and Quinones is a quality opponent. I'm gonna expect Quinones to get the win here, but I would be pleasantly surprised if O'Malley eked it out. But this will be another great fight. There's a reason this is headlining the prelims. Adolfo Vieira versus Saparbek Safarov. should be pretty easy to call, honestly, because nobody's stopping this Rodolfo Vieira BJJ, incredible BJJ practitioner, bringing it to MMA. And Safarov's last loss was he was submitted by Tyson Pedro. So Vieira's going to twist him up like a pretzel, probably. So I've got Rodolfo Vieira in that one by submission. Then we got Mark O. Madsen from Switzerland, right? No, Norway. From Norway. My bad, I read that map wrong. And just the same way no one's stopping Rodolfo Vieira's BJJ, nobody's stopping Marco Madsen's grappling. These are going to be two grappling expositions back to back, because Marco Madsen's probably going to smash Austin Hubbard. Austin Hubbard had a lot of trouble dealing with Davi Hamos and his grappling, and Marco Madsen's ground and pound is unreal, if you recall his last fight. So that's going to be probably a great matchup. Emily Whitmire's probably going to submit Polyana Viana. Giga Chikadze stepped in, great kickboxer. He's going to go against Jamal Emmers, who stepped in for Douglas Da Silva de Andrade. This fight was originally... What fight was this originally? This was originally Movsar Evloev versus Douglas Da Silva de Andrade. Andrade pulls out, and Jamal Emmers steps in, and then Evloev drops out because of his motorcycle crash, and then Giga Chikadze jumps in. Always going to love watching Giga Chikadze in the UFC. I loved watching him in Glory when he made the transition. I was super excited. I love watching that high acumen of kickboxing in the UFC. Jamal Emmers is really going to need to out-grapple him and rely on being a better MMA fighter than a better striker, and I think that's going to be hard because I looked back and his last loss was to Julian Erosa, and if you're losing to Julian Erosa, Giga Chikadze is probably going to knock you straight out. So I got Giga in that one, and then we got Deron Winn versus Gerald Mearshart, really giving people a treat for the Fight Pass prelims this week. Deron Winn... That's who I got, Deron Winn. I think he's going to be a better wrestler. I think Mearshart has trouble with really athletic guys with decent takedown defense. And I think Deron is going to probably roll him around quite a bit. I think Mearshart's going to have a lot of trouble. The only thing is if he's able to keep his distance and able to keep Deron Winn off of him. Other than that, I see him getting out-grappled. He needs to stay away. He needs to use his range, and he needs to use those kicks to the body, like the one he had against Eric Spicely there. I believe it was Eric Spicely. Let's see. Am I right? I know he beat Eric Spicely. Yeah, body kick, Eric Spicely. There I go. Okay. Well, that is the UFC 248 card. It's an absolute crackerjack of a card. It's a shell of what it used to be, but it's still going to be a great night of fights. And thank you for joining me on this week's episode of Throwin Bones MMA podcast. I'm hoping to start getting these out a little bit more regularly, but school and health is really kicking my butt. If you can share this around on social media to anyone who likes fighting and wants to hear this stuff. If you want to support it, subscribe to us on Instagram, join our Facebook group. Tell Facebook that the website isn't spam, let them know that, because apparently they're blocking our articles right now as spam. I'd like to put out articles more regularly, but I can't. If you generally like my writing stuff on the website, I have a short story that I wrote is being published in Freefall magazine on April 30th. I will put maybe not link in this description, but upcoming the next couple of shows, I'll start linking where you can buy a copy of that magazine. It'll be about $12, and you're getting some of the best fiction and poetry that's published in Canada. Period. It's one of the most popular fiction magazines in Canada. I was lucky enough to get in with a short story that I wrote. So if you want to get that, you can support me and support fantastic literature still being published. Despite the day and age that we live in. You can get that there. It'll be about $12 and I think $20 if you want to get a full year subscription. You get 4 issues. It's published quarterly. And then on April 30th, there's going to be a launch party in Calgary. So if you live in Calgary and you like my stuff, you can come down to the Owl's Nest. It's the oldest independent bookshop in Calgary. On April 30th, we're doing a Freefall magazine launch party, and I'm going to be there reading my short story that is included in this season's volume. So I want to thank Freefall so much for giving me that opportunity. I want to thank you all for listening. If you want to see some other stuff that's not MMA related, you can go check that out. That'd be much appreciated. And I'll be here breaking down. I'll have to watch. I'm going to be watching Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero. I'm going to be watching that the morning after on Sunday. So I got my girlfriend's birthday on Saturday, and I'll let you freaks know what happened. I'll let you know what I think. But very excited. It's going to be one of the best cards in a while, I think. So keep it sleazy and enjoy.